Thank you.
Next we'll hear from Marv Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was out there, and I really think, because as you know, you moved my comment section, well, not mine, but the comment section from the beginning of the meeting to the end of the meeting to stop me from speaking a couple years ago. You could have amended the thing and let all these people speak, whether they're for or against the library, so these kids can get home. And that's the reason this city the way it is. Because you guys enforce the rules when you want, and then when somebody comes up here and complains, you got the police on them. And if one person come up to this microphone, when you talk about public relations and complain about police harassment, there's probably 100 of them that are afraid to show up. Because the makeup of this city, police scare people in foreign countries, believe it or not. And then the meeting today was talking about earlier report, do we have a newspaper? Yeah, we got the Troy Times, the Democratic speech organ. And the reason I call it the Democratic speech organ, because they always feature Democrats. Look at this, get engaged. There's a Keep Strong. This is March 17th. That's the Democratic Party. You know, and then the guy's report was talking about how Kent County got the millage raises. Well, Kent County doesn't even care about Detroit. It works with Chicago. We're dealing with Detroit. And they keep saying, help Detroit. Well, where does Detroit end? 8 Mile? Is it 3 counties? Is it 5 counties? Is it 7 counties? And our companies in this city work in this city, so they don't got to pay taxes in Detroit. But we take students out of Detroit schools and stick them in our schools, and then all of a sudden we got problems. And as far as the TCU, they are not anti-tax. They want this money to be spent right in the city of Troy. These people, 40 years, 50 years, I've lived in this city ever since I was 4 years old. I could read and write at 4 years old. I've been to city council meetings when they was in that city buildings over there. You know what? The same crooks are running this city as they did before, and that's the reason why this city's not liked. Got something called the DDA. I call them the dumb, dimmer, and ass lickers of this city. They've worked on 16 Mile ever since it begun. Look at it. It's trash dump. Then we got whirlybirds right by the flags. Remember the reason that we put the flags out there? So people can be real quiet over the dead ones? No, we got the band going on out there. Now, until we are not anti-tax, we want this money to be spent right. We got 4 billionaires in this city. Each one of those billionaires could give up $500,000, which they couldn't even see. And then we got Bank of America over there that gave out $2 billion in one day. And then, remember, Keep Strong Troy, the motto, Obama needs to raise $1 billion to be the next president. So I agree with you, Mayor. These city Democrats are pretty greedy. They should all vote yes. Thank you.
Next we'll hear from Scott Fisher.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, even new council grand people. And thank you for being so committed. My name is Scott Foster, proud Troy Schools graduate and current vice chair of the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Please allow me to briefly impress upon you the importance of consideration of the Troy or the Transit Center. You might find it unfortunate that perhaps the Transit Center and the library may be in jeopardy. Properties near transit centers are twice as valuable. Well-built transportation options are common denominators and valuable for successful communities. The Chamber is supportive of the Transit Center, and we do respectfully request your consideration regarding such a potentially valuable program. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Bloomingdale, go ahead. I see Dan Brakes behind you. Then I'll call the next 5. Mr. Bloomingdale, good evening.
Good evening. Well, majority of my remarks are directed at you 7 people and the city manager. I want you to know that I wrote these notes before the meeting, so I'm not plagiarizing anybody. I have a tendency to trust each and every one of you and have confidence in you. Furthermore, I think a majority of the voters here not too long ago demonstrated the same thing because they voted you to hold the seat you're holding now. I believe that you can retain the confidence of the people in this town, mine, and support by having the courage, strength, and wisdom to formulate a ballot proposal that does these things. One, restores our police department to a proactive, full-service capacity versus a reactive, limited-service, bare-bones operation. Two, a ballot proposal that reestablishes the Department of Public Works capable of maintaining our infrastructure, including plowing our roads, cutting the grass in public spaces, patching potholes, and everything else that they do. Three, a ballot proposal that recognizes the value of the community center and the Parks and Rec Department and allows them to again provide the programs that are enjoyed by people of all ages. Four, a proposal that maintains City Hall as our City Hall. A few years ago, out of concern for our image as a city, we spent a considerable amount of money trying to stop Hooters from locating at Big Beaver and Rochester Road. Now, what would it do to our image as a city when people driving north on I-75 around the curve at Big Beaver and see a Walmart sign or something like it on a building obviously designed to be a city hall? Fifth, I want to see a ballot proposal that retains the Troy City Library as a city-owned, world-class, full-service library versus some pared-down, part-time, Hicktown library, version of a library. Six, these 5 city assets will more than likely require additional funding. Therefore, this ballot proposal needs to include an adequate and secure funding provision, whether it be a millage increase, an annual assessment of a fixed dollar amount, or some similar vehicle. The intent of any ballot proposal you draft needs to view the city as a whole. This city is a sum of its parts. There's no one that one part of it that I see is being more important than the other. A retired chief of police summed it up this way: the purpose of a city is to provide safety, schools, and services. In the past, Troy has been a city people wanted to move to because of our ability to provide safety, great schools, and services. If we want our property values to return to where they once were, we have to regain our ability to provide these 3 things. A ballot proposal similar to the one I've just described will put our future in our hands.
Thank you. That's your
You know, I'm going to say this, I'm going to override you a little bit, Mayor.
No,
John
sir.
Zerlak,
Mr. Bloomingdale.
I admire you. The heat that you take,
Thank you. Mr.
you've
Brake,
been used as a scapegoat, and it's wrong.
Mr. Come up next. Before you start speaking, I'm going to call on the next 5 people. Patricia Cooper-Conager, Mina Kuznetsovich, Padma Kupa, Thomas Burke, Janice Daniels, and Gerald Mellon. Okay, Mr. Brake.
Good evening. I'm disappointed with several hundred of your constituents here earlier this evening that not one of you took a moment to step up to the lobby and recognize them. It must be a disappointing experience for them not to be able to wait until their particular item was on the agenda. Our community has 9 library days remaining. During the debate of recent weeks, we have shown that there are more than sufficient funds available to keep the library open at its present reduced level of operations. The debate here and throughout the community between now and November should be about what, if any, higher level of library operations there should be, and about how to pay for that level of operation. The debate should not be about when the library will reopen and who will then be found to staff it. We have a great staff already. We should keep them. Closing our library will inevitably result in unnecessary losses to that staff, to the library, and to our community. Great people and great leaders have always been willing to change their minds, and one of you 4 could change your mind and your vote during the discussion later this evening. You would thereby change our library's future and improve our community's future greatly. And what else could you be here for? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Patty.
Good evening. I'm Patty Cooper-Kerner.
As some of you know, I lost my husband Tim on March 27th. What a fighter for this city that he was. I want you to know that in pre-op, while they were prepping him to go into surgery, he was telling the nurses and anesthesiologists all about Troy. He was telling them about how much he loved our city, about how much he loved our library. Then he told them about how much he was afraid for our city. While I was at the funeral home, I had something that was delivered to me. It was a letter that I want to read to you. Stated March 30th, 2011. It says, "To the family and friends of Timothy Kerner, I was saddened to learn of your loss. As a professor of history, Mr. Kerner dedicated his life to ensuring that his students would carry with them an understanding of their past so that they could actively engage in their future. I know his passion for improving our community continued in his retirement as well, through his advocacy for local institutions like the Troy Library, for example. Undoubtedly, he will be missed by you and so many others. Although this is certainly a trying time, I hope you will find solace and some comfort as you reflect on his gift of life. Sincerely, Gary C. Peters," and he personally signed it. I'm pretty proud, that I got this letter. I don't know how he knew that my husband passed away because we never met with Mr. Peters. I know that you all know how hard that Tim fought for the library, and I hope that you guys make the right decision. I think that it would have been a wonderful thing tonight, Mayor, if you would have taken some time and talked to all of the children as a group, because I think they had a right to talk about their voice, with the library. Please revive our dying city. Please restore the trust in the city, because trust is something that has to be earned. You guys know that. So I hope that you guys make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our condolences. Our condolences, Patricia.
Good evening. I'm Padma Kupa. I'm a resident of Troy for almost 13 years. Earlier I heard Vendela speak, and that brought tears to my eyes. And the prior speaker also did. So if my voice quavers, please bear with me. This is a very emotional thing, but I do want to bring something someone said in the last century. Roman Catholic Cardinal Terence Cook said, "The reflections and histories of men and women throughout the world are contained in books. America's greatness is not only recorded in books, but it is also dependent upon each and every citizen being able to utilize public libraries." This isn't about the millage, this is about the millage eventually, but this is about a plea for all of you tonight to make the right choice so that we do have more opportunities to educate more people. All of those people who are here tonight do not necessarily understand the months that we have battled to keep the library alive, and they need to have more information rather than some of the misinformation that the media has been giving them, or certain groups or individuals have been giving them. Please take time and deliberate and make sure that our library stays open so that we have an opportunity for another millage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Burke.
When I came in tonight about 7:30, this place was packed. There were more people in the hall and twice as many downstairs. Most people I'd never seen here at a council meeting before. That's before, I guess, using the survey gentleman's outreach terminology. I guess we get an F for outreach today, as they all left. And most of them didn't get a chance to talk. A lot of them had signs. And I think what the sign said that I saw was, "Save the transit center," because the transit center is obviously a critical service. Don't let those naysayers in Birmingham keep us from amending the budget here in Troy and making up the difference of money we don't have to keep this transit center going. Because we know when we see a bus in the city of Troy, it's standing room only. We need that critical service. It's a critical service just like the car allowances that we provide certain employees in the city of Troy, and the $80,000 plus benefit packages that are critical services. Obviously, close the library, because nobody goes to the library. Of course, with a transit center, they could get a bus to the library. Oh, maybe that won't work out. Think about what you're doing. Tonight, you have the opportunity to change a budget and keep the library open. Will that happen? No, because 4 members of council have a plan that was expressed wonderfully by a gentleman in a red shirt that says closing the library sets Troy up for a big millage increase this fall, and that has been the plan all along. And like a Greek tragedy here in Troy, we're just acting out, you know, Act 3 in this play, and the next act is the closing of the library. So once again, just keep on. You know, the trust group comes up here and blames TCU. I love it. You know, Troy Residents United for some more taxes. There's no problem. Throwing good money after bad won't solve. Don't do things economical. Don't find some money to keep the library open for a year or 6 months or whatever. Just mothball it, and let's keep that transit center going. Yay, team.
Janice, before you start, let me call the next 5 people. Gerald Mallon, Anu Prasad, Rabe Baleni. It just says Gongal. I don't see a first name. Gunsecker Pole and William Cowger. William Cowger. If those people are here still, would they line up, please, behind Mrs. Daniels? Okay. Mrs. Daniels, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Schelling. Good evening, Council. First, I'd like to extend a thank you to Councilman Hawryluk. You are a true man of the people. In spite of the overwhelming tone deafness of many members of this council, I would also like to thank TCU, the Troy Citizens United Group, especially for that educational forum that they put on Thursday night. I learned so much from them. I learned that truth is more important than trust. Actuarials are more important than budgets, because budgets are a tool that are oftentimes used by leadership to misrepresent and mislead the people. The doom and gloom scenario about our property values that was given earlier this evening fits in well with the city's agenda to dig deeper into the pocket of the taxpayers. But what happened to that rosy outlook in the State of the Union address that you gave last year, Mayor Schilling, where you identified 75 or so business projects that were either expanding here in Troy or moving to Troy to expand our tax base? We haven't heard anything about them, but we continue to hear the doom and gloom of the naysayers. I wonder how many of you really believe that a tax increase is going to help our corporate tax base? I would like to hear an answer to that, possibly in the response to the public comments. And also, you've been given a fiduciary responsibility, and yet you continue to use our taxpayers' money to buy expensive studies and surveys. You refuse to listen to the will of the people. Please keep our library open for at least the short interim so that we can have an election and vote in new leadership that might be more responsive to the people.
Are you,
I'm Anu. I think
Melina?
No, someone you called in front of me hasn't stepped forward.
What's your name, please?
Anu, A-N-U. Last name's Prasad.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm here representing my kids who were here earlier today and all their classmates. I promised them I'd drop them off at home so they could go to bed and come back. Just they wanted me to implore the importance for them of having a library, and how, previously when the millage was being passed, they all, batted up to the plate and we all came and voted yes, but I know there was a lot of things going around that made it confusing for a lot of people who would have wanted to keep the library open and would have, if had another chance, would have, wanted to increase whatever they could do to help keep the library open. We also, felt that it's sort of short-sighted to close the library because it, leads to further property values, and it sounds like all these have been discussed before. And then less money and less resources for other things. So just here again imploring on behalf of our kids and their classmates to keep the library open, whatever means that we can do to help out as citizens.
Thank you. Bill Calgar?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. I think many people know that I've lived here for 33 years now, I believe. My children have taken advantage of the library. They've taken advantage also of the soccer fields that the city has mowed, the baseball fields that they've taken care of, all the Parks and Rec programs. They've taken advantage of the Nature Center. They've taken advantage of all the museum. And it was an incredible place to raise my children. There's no question about that. We kept investing, and I have spent a considerable amount of money over my 33 years, and I thought I had a tremendous value for my investment. As things have progressed, to see that investment dwindle really does concern me, and I certainly do not want that to be our legacy. The opportunities we have for a mere $200, if we and someone said, yeah, it's worth more tax. Yeah, we're more tax. I do believe that my property value will go down 1 or 2 or 3% more than it would in other communities if the library closes. That it will go down because we no longer have a Parks and Rec program. For those of you that don't know, as of July 1st, the Parks and Rec program will not exist. It went from 32 people 2 years ago or 3 years ago when it was rated the best in the state, and it will now be 6 people. The library is just a symptom of the problem. It's not the entire problem. Is the point I'm getting to. We have so many opportunities. We still have a great city. We still have incredible services. We want our snow plowed, but when you lose 25, 35% of your tax base, we've already laid off 95 people. The police department, by the end with this current 3-year budget, the police department will be the same as it was in 1979, when we had 20,000 less people and we had 50,000 less employees that come to work in the city every day. 1979, that's where we're going to be. And it's certainly not the city of tomorrow today. We do have to accept the fact that revenues have gone down, cuts have been made, and we got to get the message out that to save our city, we're going to have to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. That concludes those that signed up to speak. We'll have response to public comment if council members wish to do that, or we'll continue on to the other items on the agenda. Council members, do you have any comments or reply questions?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
I was just going to ask, I don't have the sign-up thing over here, but I think it was pointed out to me that somebody may have signed up on one or more of the other sections.
Oh, Ed Kempen's down here. You want that? On H1.
Mr. Kempen, you signed up on a postponed item, but we only take comments now. Do you wish to speak? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for identifying me and realizing that I was perhaps left out. Like the library's been left out. This is a tough moment. It really is. We're coming down to the wire, and our citizens really do need something to be adjusted here. We need to keep this library open. It's plain and simple. You understand what the citizens all want. I know it hasn't worked out the way either of the competing factions would have liked. We all struggled through this, as council. You've struggled balancing your agendas with what the citizens have on their agendas. I've struggled myself with some of these things that we've had to deal with here. I've had to fight City Hall, and I've heard that that's a hard thing to do. I think we need to look at the budget and see what we can do, especially in light of, I think, certain death of the transit center, which should land $1.3 million in your laps. I know it's not everything you need, and there's lots of other opportunities, but I think you need to go and find out how you can adjust the budget, move some numbers around, and keep the library afloat, at least until the citizens have a chance to decide in November. That's all.
Thank you. Next, is there any response or comment from council?
Mayor?
Councilman Slater.
I think somebody needs to speak about the transit center, $1.3 million. My understanding is that we don't have any city funds dedicated to the transit center anymore. Is there operation, or is there general operations, or what? If we could get an answer for that.
I don't believe there's any, pardon my voice, I don't believe there's any local funding in next year's budget for the transit center. All the money shown there is the grant money, but I'm going to defer to John and Mark to see if that's a correct statement.
Mr. Lamorado.
Mayor and City Council, the current year's budget, 2010-11, does not have any city allocated funds for the transit center. The proposed budget, which you'll receive tonight, does not have any money, any general city money for the transit center. 2009-10, there was a $1.3 million allocation. That's almost 2 years ago old now, and that some of those funds were used. The remaining funds fell into the capital fund balance and have been reappropriated for other projects. There's not $1.3 million available currently for the transit center to be used for any other purpose.
Thank you. I think that that question and the comments from people that have talked about things is evident that some have taken information from former budgets. Someone tonight got up, and I think it was Mr. Beck. He had information from 2009, and as he was reading it off, then he would leave the year out, so it made it look like it was now. That's been the problem, is that we have had misinformation that has been passed on to people, and therefore people get the wrong idea about things. I think tonight that we had information that is documented information. We had comments, yes, from residents that came here tonight, but the telephone survey that was done with 400 people, which can be extrapolated out to a larger population, indicated some items that people felt were more important for their monies than the library. Although the library did come out in the top tier, it was not the top item. In fact, it was 7th down on that. Things about fire protection, police, snow plowing, those things came out higher. None of the comments, except for a couple people tonight, took into consideration that this all has been very difficult for the City Council making these tough decisions. But when you have less revenue each and every year come out, We have to do things to balance the budget. The general fund budget for this year, general operating, 58 million approximately last year. It's going down to 52 million and then the next year to 50 million. We have declining revenue coming in, and for operations of for services in the city, we have to have a number of people to do those things. We've cut staff, we've cut programs, we've cut all kinds of things. Many of the communities that surround us have asked for millages that are dedicated millages to augment their declining property revenues that are coming in. In fact, Madison Heights has a vote on May 3rd to vote for a millage for their library. Not for an independent library, but as part of their budget. Oak Park has millage for a library that is dedicated funds. Royal Oak has dedicated funds for a library, and Southfield and Birmingham. They also have dedicated funds for parks, for public safety, for police and fire prevention in many of these communities. Many communities have gone to a dedicated millage. We have not had that, but I can guarantee you we are going to have that discussion at this council table about dedicated millage, because it is only revenue that is going to take care of the problems that people are talking about either with a phone survey or when they come here tonight to ask us to do things. It is not a management problem. It is a revenue problem, ladies and gentlemen.
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I think the chuckles at the end were, and I want to ask Mr. Lamorato a direct question, if I may. It was my understanding that the answer that you gave regarding the transit center is that neither in this year's budget nor next year's budget is there any city money for the transit center in those budgets. And the money that is reflected there is grant money that can only be used for the transit center. It is not city money.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other responses or reply to public comment?
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I really appreciated, in fact, a lot of the comments tonight and didn't disagree with many of them who came. I had no idea that so many people would come tonight. It is unfortunate, and people had mentioned it, that the agenda had already been printed, that the public hearings had already been declared. I was actually anticipating seeing the review of the survey in a study session, which would have been at the end of the meeting. But I think we certainly do appreciate people who came out and people who recognize the love of the library, which was acclaimed tonight as the heart and soul of the community, which in fact it is. I do think it was worthwhile that we did have the city assessor's report, because again it pointed out that for 5 straight years the assessed values have dropped, 9% this year, 14.56 the year before, 6.23 the year before that, 3.04 before that, 2.80. It's a cumulative problem that we face, not only with, as the mayor pointed out, that revenue stream which we don't see, but the information we have now learned from Lansing that we will not be seeing some revenue sharing. We will not be able to count on that revenue stream, all of those consolidation efforts, all of the shared services, all of those things which the governor proclaims that he likes to see in a city, we have done, and those won't count going forward for this year. So we will have to be thinking of ways that we can do more with less. The concern continues to be not only for those wonderful services that we have, including our library, but also for the public safety services that we know come with the cost. And that's really what we're grappling with. To continue one thing, a cut will have to come from somewhere else. And that's what we've been looking at all along. So even though the survey shows great support in one area, it also says, please keep safety issues at the top. It's difficult. I would absolutely support sustainable funding for our services, especially our library. Have worked for the millages before. I did appreciate the comments about if I had only known then what I know now kind of thing. In looking at that February millage, many of us did walk in the snow trying to say, here it is. The postcard that still says the things that it is. The average resident will see an overall reduction in the total tax bill, has happened. If the 1.9 millage proposal fails, the submitted budget will close the library, museum, nature center, and will lay off 47 police employees. That stands. City services in all areas will be cut to a bare minimum. That's where we are. There will be dramatic impact to public safety and quality of life. That's a fact. The city is still achieving wage and benefit concessions and continues to do. And all cost-cutting measures are being sought consistently. And this was, again, the postcard that went out in advance of that ask for a millage, which would have cost the average taxpayer $38. Some of us more, some of us less, some of us nothing. But that's what the difference, a $38 increase would have meant.
Any other from council response or reply to public comment?
Mayor?
This time, Councilman Howard.
Yes, I actually have a inquiry to make of management, and I don't necessarily know that the answer is available this evening, but just to keep everybody kind of on the same page with numbers and facts and all that kind of thing, and since we're going to have some decisions to make going forward, could we at some point get a total accounting of all monies spent to date on the transit center, including the lobbyists that were spent, and how much Birmingham spent, and how much Troy spent, and how much? I guess we don't really know what's going to happen with the transit center, so I can only really ask for what's been spent so far.
Yes, we can do that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. I did want to respond to, well, you know, I think I don't want to perpetuate a conversation that's kind of gone back and forth for 18 months, because I think we really need to get into the meat of the meeting. But I think it is unfair to say that, and it doesn't help folks try to make a decision when you say 1.9 mils equals $38, okay? Because you're not comparing apples to apples, as you would like to say. So 1.9 mils on a taxable value of $100,000 is $190. You can compare it to last year. You can compare it to 1984 for all I care. But 1.9 mils is 1.9 mils. And if you're trying to make the case that it needs to happen, be honest with how much it's going to cost. Because a number of people did come up and say that it would cost, and they used examples from their homes, and they said they were willing to pay for it. And I think we need to make sure that we do not try to obfuscate the issues, and that we're forthright. And I think that the calculator, as I said at the last meeting, the tax calculator allows people to see what the additional levy would be. But I do think that, you know, we could sit here, go back and forth, and not really move forward. But I think that the rest of the meeting needs to happen at some point.
Madam Mayor, I believe I said average, unless I was, did I not say average? No, you did not. Oh, okay, then I stand corrected. I meant to say the average tax bill, just like we now know that the average tax bill from a homeowner in Troy is $909.69 for city taxes only. Now, some people pay more and some people pay less, but that's the average tax bill for city services.
Okay, let's go on then to the postponed items that, another break? Okay. 5 minutes break, and then we'll go to the postponed.
That's why we're running to the...
Council's back in session. The next item that's before us is a postponed item that was before us, moved by Kerwin, seconded by McGinnis, on the 3-year 2010-11, 12-13 revised budget spring 2011 update, and was postponed to this meeting. So we'll continue with that item. At the last meeting when we postponed it, I voted no because I felt that we didn't even need to have this item on the agenda because we were coming up to budget study sessions next week on the 25th and then again on May 2nd. And I felt that we didn't need to have an additional resolution that was on the table. There was discussion of a different change, and then this item still remains here. So, Council, what is your intent on this item?
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltrami?
I believe that I've heard from the majority of this council over the last year that although the library has been cut out of funding, it is an important community asset. And I think the common phrase from this table is everybody wants the library to stay open. And then there's a big but. And I understand the but as well as anyone. However, I just don't think this priority service model is working for our community. And so I sent you all a proposal that would fund not even today's library, but it would fund a library of a little over $1.6 million to give us a part-time library so that the collection would have access maintained to the public. We paid for that collection. The public deserves to have access to it.
Okay.
It also gives a finite...
Councilman Beltrami, I don't have in front of me a printed copy of what you sent to us today. So as we have a discussion of that, is this yours?
It's yours.
I think we need to have that in front of...
Now you have one.
I think all the council members need to have it in front of them. The others don't have it either. So is there a way we could get that?
It was sent.
Yeah.
It was sent to us, but we didn't print it off and bring it. I thought it would be at the table, and it was not.
Should have been.
So I just caution you on that. Okay, go ahead.
And that's fine. It also gives a finite target amount for any bidding of services if we wanted to save some funding. It allows time for grant opportunities to be further explored. It avoids, and this is really most important for those of you who say, well, we'll close it and then we'll start it up later. That startup cost, if the library is closed for any period of time, becomes almost cost prohibitive. And then you need not only operational money, you need startup money. So it avoids that. It avoids some of the expenses of closure. This plan is as sustainable as anything else this council is using fund balance to assist funding for. And quite honestly, it is the quintessential compromise. Nobody's happy. I don't want a part-time library of less than 20 hours, but it does maintain the collection. It uses current resources with no tax increase. Everybody gives something and everybody gets something. Our library, particularly the computer bank, is more important now than it used to be. Someone said to me about 6 months ago, that's duplicative services. Michigan Works down on Stevenson does that. We shouldn't have to do that. Michigan Works down on Stevenson is closing. Now for those people looking for jobs in Troy, our library computers are the only places where they can fill out those applications if they don't have computer services elsewhere. So I would encourage you to send a signal that we do not want to shutter our library, that we are willing to work together to find funding in the future. If you don't like my 1.6, at least commit through resolution to funding the library in the next budget.
May I ask you a question, Councilman Beltramini? In the second page, it says this is funding that would begin July 1st, 2011. It's bare bones and can't be shared with another fiscal year. Therefore, it is not my idea to keep the library open in May and June 2011 if this year's funding does not provide resources for that.
Exactly.
Did you ask if there are resources for May and June this year?
In talking to the library director, and I don't know if she's here or not,
Yes.
she can probably better answer that than I can. We did have a discussion about that.
Well, and I need to ask Mr. Lamorato. Mr. Brake, you've been here a lot, you know. Really? It's not necessary. Mr. Lamorato, is there funding in this year's budget to keep the library open in May and June?
Mayor and City Council, there is funding. It was planned to be opened until June 30th. The director decided they would need a couple months for closing preparation. That's why the May 1st date was there. But there is funding for the library operations through June 30th this year.
Okay, thank you. Now, I need to ask you, Councilwoman Beltramini, in proposing this, is it your thought process that in doing this, that would enable people to have a chance to vote in November on a dedicated millage that would be long-term sustainable funding? Because this would be temporary funding.
Everything we're doing today, Mayor, is temporary funding, and that needs to be a holistic discussion of this council later. It is my thought that if this council, through resolution, does not send a signal to our citizens and to other communities that we are willing to find funding for community access to our public library, our property values will diminish immediately on May 1st. But all of that aside, we speak through resolution. How often do we hear that from the city manager? And right now, the resolution of record says our library closes June 30th for everything. So we need an alternate resolution, and I believe we need it before the library closes.
Okay. And the other question I have is, in looking at the survey information that was provided us tonight, the people in the community spoke and said increase the dollars and keep the same. Fire protection service, 88%. Fixing potholes, maintaining and resurfacing, 86%. Snow plowing, ice removal, and street, 82%. Garbage recycling and yard waste collection, 80%. Police protection services, 79%. Snow plowing, ice removal for county, 75%. And then public library operations, 72%. How does this jive with that when this would take money from all of the other areas in the budget?
When you take out the keep the same, this is the primary service that people are willing to pay for and have in their community.
Further discussion on this item? Remember, the proposal before us is what is written in the agenda, and then Councilwoman Beltramini is proposing an amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, and it's written out in the document.
Right. Okay. Council members?
Mayor?
Councilman Fleming?
Yes, I agree with Councilman Beltramini. This is a bare bones. It's not what anybody wants. But we're learning more every day as to what the state's willing to do. And there's a bill out there now that's pending. We've talked before about will we continue to get state funding. We know the state funding is probably going to be cut by 40% anyway, according to that bill. But also in that bill it says we're probably going to be able to have a library at less than 65 hours a week. I mean, it's in the bill. It hasn't passed yet, but the indications are it's on the fast track to passing. So this is not the library we want, but we're always concerned in the past when we got below 65 hours, below a certain number of hours, we wouldn't be able to get the state funding. We'll have the reciprocal agreements with the other libraries. And I think it sends the right signal to the community. And what Councilwoman Beltramini has outlined here, and I've gone over the numbers, this sends the right signal that we're willing to do what it takes. The funding is here. We do have to come up with about $416,000 reduction in general fund other areas to fund the library, but on over a $50 million budget, $416,000 is not a big stretch, I don't think. But it also buys us time to get into the budget process and see where else we could find funds. But I really think this is what the citizens want, and if you look at increased dollars, public library operations is at the top of people are willing to pay for. The next page, from what you were looking at, you flipped to one page, that's what they're willing to do. It's a top priority. And even as the surveyor told us tonight, this is so important to the community. I mean, we don't have a number of other things, baseball teams, but this is what people can rally around. And I think that's what we're seeing in this city. People are rallying around the library. And we need to be listening.
Further comments?
Madam Mayor.
Council Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin.
I do appreciate the plan that you've worked on, Councilmember Beltramini. I did receive it late this afternoon. I know that it came through the manager's office, even though you had prepared this before. So these numbers are new and would merit, although Councilmember Fleming says he's, looked carefully at those numbers. Some of us may not have. I know I haven't. I see what you have put down here. You admit that this is your crafted version, and I have no doubt that you've met with some members of the administration that I see here tonight. We all haven't had that opportunity. I suppose what I would prefer to see is at the budget session next week, looking at these numbers together as part of that whole and seeing where to go. I'm not prepared to vote on this tonight, although I appreciate the intention. I just don't know about the numbers before putting them in a resolution.
Councilman Slater?
I tend to agree with that. I got this late today also, but I did have a discussion about it. But the first thing I want to say is that, I've been waiting for the survey, and it wasn't a surprise to me, but now I want to do everything I can to save the library. I think it was a clear message to save the library. Now we have to decide how to do it.
Yeah.
That's, to me, okay, let's save the library, now let's decide how to do it. And I don't think the amended resolution goes with the other resolution. It seems to almost contradict it a little bit. And I would prefer to deal with the first resolution and get rid of that. And then I think, along with Mary, we need to talk about this in the budget session. I want to tie what you're suggesting to something else. And I don't think it should be done here tonight. We have 3 budget sessions or 2, and then we'll be back May 9th. I still think we can move forward and give a clear message to the people, but I don't like the way it's tied together, and I want to I want to do something long-term for the library, not short-term. So I think we should get rid of the first resolution. We don't need it right now. We're going to be talking about the budget in a couple of weeks, and in my opinion, I agree with the mayor. I wasn't in favor of this 2 weeks ago. I'm not in favor of it today, and we should get rid of it. And then I think it's good enough for us to sit up here tonight and tell the people, we heard what you said. We're going to bat for the library. We're going to get it done one way or another. But we have to come to a consensus on how to do it. And I don't have enough information tonight to look at this, but I think in the next couple of weeks we should be able to get together and do this. So that's my opinion.
Are you suggesting that we take no action on the resolution that's before us? The one that's printed in the agenda?
I would
I want to get rid of the postponement.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Take no action or give whatever.
Well, we need a resolution then to do that.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltrame?
I don't think we can take no action.
Mrs. Bartholomew?
We do have an active main motion on the table, and it will either have to be withdrawn or voted on.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
My concern is that, we have this May 1st deadline coming around.
Yeah.
And if it's the desire to wait until after or during the budget study sessions, then what I would certainly encourage us to do is to consider also moving back the closure process, meaning that instead of beginning to close it down, the library that is, that we simply run things, the library runs as is, pending decisions that will be made at our budget study sessions.
Madam Mayor?
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
I agree. Some of us have discussed that, and I agree with that. May 1st doesn't have to be the drop-dead date tonight. We're learning, as was stated along the way. I think June 1st, or whatever date you want to come up with, but I think we can do that.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltrame?
Ms. Russ is in the audience, but it seems to me that when we first talked about closing this library, the original closing to borrowing was sometime in March, and so they've already cut that time in half. If we don't send a signal that we're not going to close it, I believe she's got 2 months' work to do, but she's better equipped to answer that question than I am.
Well, my determination on whether we close the library or not depends upon the council having a discussion about providing dedicated millage for a library long-term. I think to put a Band-Aid on a severe wound is not what the community wants. The community wants a library that, in fact, they want the library that they had before this all happened. And I think it's been proven that it has to be done with sustained revenue. So I think that that's necessary for the council to have that discussion as part of their budget discussion. Further discussion on the resolution that is before us. It can be withdrawn. It was moved by Councilwoman Kerwin, seconded by Councilman McGinnis.
I would withdraw it, Madam Mayor. Move to withdraw the resolution.
Councilwoman McGinnis, do you want to second it?
Yeah. I second that.
Moved by Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis. They're withdrawing the resolution that is before us for the 3-year 2010-11, 2012-13 revised budget, spring 2011 update. Discussion? Councilwoman Beltrame?
If I vote yes on this, am I able to continue to talk about this funding?
We could suspend rules and talk about it.
Mrs. Bartholomew?
Would the desire be to continue it at this time or at a future date? Because it is a scheduled item, I think that it can continue without even suspending the rules.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion before us is to withdraw the motion that is printed in the agenda. Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howrlack?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Beltramini, you want to discuss
I do.
funding?
I do, and it's not just library funding, and that's why that discussion needs to be part of. I stated it, I think, the best way possible. This funding that I cobbled together is as sustainable as anything else because we are using gushing amounts of fund balance. It is a revenue problem. There are always efficiencies that we can find. You affect them by accident as often as not, but we're not going to find millions of dollars of them. The other piece is, and again, is it your intent, even if it is your intent, to go for a millage, whether it's for the library general, one for roads, one for public safety, one for whatever, if that is your intent, closing the library does not help with that and only makes it more expensive. And so at the very least, we need to commit to find some modicum of library operational funding for next year's budget, if that is what you are thinking. And we need to send that signal now.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes. Are you asking for the floor?
I am. Oh, I am. I'm sorry.
I'm glad I was so
it's
impressive.
11:30. It's 11:30.
But you know we play by the rules.
Oh, my
Mayor
God.
Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yeah, I actually think this, this really needs to be part of a larger context, and that's probably why I'm trying to do a study session at this table, and it's not working that well. But I think that in your piece here, I think there needs to be real discussion about what this looks like, because you have an idea of what this looks like, that this kind of a library, kind of not, this 20-year slimmed-down version, reading room collection available piece, but we have not discussed that as a body. We also haven't, as you point out, when you pull something from one thing, you have to pull something from something else. We need to look at that. The 416 that we talked about earlier still has to come from somewhere. So I think we would be better served to have a full discussion about that with the input of staff on is this what we desire. In terms of the library itself, is this what I desire? No, not at all, not even close. I, as a real library user, value all of the things that we have since lost. This current library, and gosh darn it, folks have worked very hard, all of our volunteers, but this library that's put a stress on everybody 6 days a week is not the library. It's not our award-winning library. And I do more in that and understand the folks who came here tonight, we want our library. This isn't it either.
No.
This is something. But I think we really have to talk about, if you're talking about a full year, is this anything close to it? No, it really isn't anything close to it at all for me. Not for you either? Well, we would need to have a session where we could talk about whether we would like to set a special meeting in conjunction with the budget, next week's budget, or whether this can be incorporated into it. Both the concept that's issued here, and again, I appreciate your crafting it, but it was crafted out of a desire to see something, but not with all of our input. So appreciate the work on it, but I think we need to figure out whether the concept that's here and whether the examples of where the funding would come from, even for that short term, or how long this kind of a fix would last. All of those things I think, more discussion than just here at the table.
Further discussion on the item?
Madam.
Yes. I couldn't tell who was first.
Go ahead.
Councilwoman McGinnis?
Well, I guess my question to Councilwoman Beltramini would be if the response from some of the council members would be that they want to look at this in the big picture in terms of the budget discussions we're going to be having as early as next week. I guess what would you need to see done today, or is the really only option in your eyes would be just to pass this as it was proposed in the email?
No, which is what I just said. If it is your intent, and that's where I need to find out where all of you are coming from. If it is your intent to find funding for the library as a part of overall services discussion, say so. Tell the people that's what you want to do, and let's pass a resolution that says we're going to try and find library funding. That's all we need to do. I don't care if it's 1.6. I put together a plan. I gave it thought. I spent hours on it as I did the budget last year. This money can come from across the board cut. It can come from ERIP savings. It can come from leftover millage. It can come from anything we find. I don't care. For purposes of discussion, I showed you how it could be done so that there wouldn't be this kind of, oh, I need to know kind of discussion. I am tired of this council saying, we want to do it, we think it's important. Saying to the people, we think it's important, and then not stepping up and saying, we're going to commit to fund it. Commit to fund something. I'm not saying commit to fund a $4.3 million library. I'm not even saying commit to fund this one. I would love to fund at least what we have this year. And if that's the funding we find, we can't even get a private consultant to bid on it unless we have a line item that says we're willing to commit this much money to this. So we can't offload expenses to a private contractor. And we put the same business on Safe Build. When we privatized the building department, we said, this is the line item in the budget, match it or beat it. I don't understand, if you're committed to saving services at the library, why you're not willing to say, we'll find some funding. That's all I'm asking for.
Mayor.
Councilman Slater?
Would you be happy if I moved a resolution to find a solution to find funding for the library?
It would have to have how long?
Yeah.
It has to have how long? Not.
We do this one for 3 years at a time. So.
I mean, if I could continue.
Go ahead, Councilman Slater.
I'm willing to commit to try and find a solution. I don't know tonight that we all agree on what the exact solution would be without sitting down and talking about it. But I will commit to finding a solution. I will tell the public that tonight. Do you need that in a resolution? But I can't get specific tonight.
Don't expect it. I mean, I got specific.
Well, I didn't have time to explore that. I think I want it tied to something else personally for a long-term solution. But I'm not prepared tonight to go into great detail with it. But I am willing to commit to find a solution.
I think finding a solution is good. I just do not want to sacrifice the other things that people in this community say are just as important as the library. So again, it's a big picture thing we need to look at. We can't just say, okay, let's just save the library, because it has to come from somewhere. And there are already cuts in this budget coming up from all the departments. So we need to look at all those numbers in the budget study session to see where it's coming and to have a discussion about whether we're willing to have dedicated millage for the library, for roads, for whatever we want to do, because it is all tied in together. You can't have a discussion and a resolution on one thing and people taking the idea that that's what's going to happen, because we have to look at the whole thing.
And
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry. Councilman Fleming?
Thank you. I feel for our library director sitting out here and the library staff, because they've got a plan, direction from city management and from this council basically to shut the library down May the 1st. And they've been working that plan very aggressively, I'm sure. And they're getting mixed signals all over. And I think what this council is trying to say and what I'm hearing, we're going to put a placeholder in the budget. We're going to find a way to keep the library open. We don't know exactly how, but I don't know what that means to you and for the city manager giving her direction, because maybe our city manager needs some clarification too, because right now we're saying we're not closing the library down May 1st, because if we close it down, it's going to be hard to bring back up. And we're already on that mode. We're already in that cycle of closing it down. You're working very aggressively at that, and we're out of time. And now we're saying put on the brakes. Sometimes it's harder to put on the brakes than we think. We sit here as a council and think that's very easy. That's not. Once you're in the mode of shutting down, and people have been communicated that. So now we've got to put a new plan together, the library director does, and with city manager. How do we reverse what this train that we've got coming down the track? How do we stop it and say we're going to
Mr. Zerlag?
keep it going?
Thank you for waiting.
Sure. I appreciate the comments.
Yeah,
I was going to bring it up if it wasn't brought up. Again, as Mr. Lamorato indicated, there's funding through June 30th, but the library is like a separate business entity, and you just can't close the doors on June 30th. Kathy came to us with a plan that ratcheted certain segments of programming down to being totally expunged, beginning even at this point in time. So there's going to be 2 budget sessions, April 25th next week and the following week. There should be enough information for you to have to make a decision at that time on what to do for the balance of the library, whatever solution that you come up with. It would be prudent, in my opinion, that if you're going to make a decision in that short a time frame, sometime during the week of May 2nd, that we not close it on May 1st, but that you still, we'll keep it open, but we'd like a decision that week. You'll have all the information that's germane, I think, to your decision at that point.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Fleming?
I think the difficulty still is we're saying we're keeping the library open, but what does that library look like? How many hours a week? Are we talking about a fully funded, fully staffed library the way we've had, or a scaled down library? And I think there are probably some differences of opinion here. I don't know. So that's the difficulty we have to grapple with as a council. Okay, we agree we're going to keep a library, but what does that library look like? And that's still more difficulty and aggravation, I think, for the staff, because we can't sit here tonight and tell with certainty what we're going to do.
Okay.
But
Councilwoman McGinnis?
Well, and I think that's another reason, too, that I would be interested in having this conversation continue in the context of the bigger picture, because I think that even if we can sit here at the council table and have some sort of consensus, I still think it's different for each council person, and I think that that could potentially be keep it open until there's a millage election, keep it open at $1.5 million for the next year, and then it closes. So I think that there's a lot of, there's a sliding scale here, even if we can have some sort of consensus that we want a place marker in there. And I don't know if we could come to any sort of agreement until we're looking at the bigger picture, which will be the budget document that is thankfully sitting right here next to us, because I don't even think that we're going to be in agreement exactly on what some of those numbers are until we have an opportunity to review them and have some discussion about it. So that's something I'm not trying to pass the buck. And I understand that we're down to the wire. I can only imagine what is going through your head right now. But we're having the conversation, and if we need to push the date back so that it's not going to close on May 1st, so we can have these discussions, that's something that we need to do. There is funding that's in the budget until June 30th, and if nothing else, we'll have to make arrangements to make up the difference in the time that would be needed to close the library, I guess.
And the other factor is that we just got this tonight, which gives us data, and we haven't had a chance, all of us, to digest all the information that's in here that was presented, that we found out from the citizenry. And many of us said we were waiting for the survey. So there's but again, it's a big picture thing. So I think having the discussion has been beneficial, but I'm not committing to anything until we've had those budget sessions and looked at all the items.
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Zerlag?
However, I will not close the doors May 1st. Is that correct? Because if you're having a discussion on May 2nd and you find a way to keep the library moving to some future point in time, the door should not close the day before.
But we need to send a clear signal to not only the library staff, but to people in the community that this doesn't mean that it saved the library.
Right.
I don't want them to get the wrong impression, because they've had wrong impressions on different dollar signs before. After we have these discussions, we may decide that we can't, given the numbers and given all the other factors. So I want the realism to be out there for people to really realize it.
Madam Mayor?
To be in reality.
Sure. And if I may,
Yes.
do you, as a governing body, do you think it's possible to make a decision on May 2nd? You have the information in front of you.
I think if we have all the information, we can make a decision.
Okay.
We've dealt with this for ever.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Protem Kerwin?
Councilmember Howard wants to talk.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Thank you. Yes, actually, I do want to talk, and I appreciate that. I think Councilwoman Beltramini is correct in saying that this is a compromise insofar that nobody's happy, but nobody's completely happy, nobody's completely sad and upset, so to say. The issue is, because it looks like what I have here, at least in my brief reading of this, is that we have a core, if you will, library service that can be operated continuously, and we're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like this proposal is for not just 1 year, but a continuous proposal. And then the question becomes, does the City Council want to have a greater service library, at which point we say, okay, now how are we going to pay for this? Are we going to be able to budget this? Or does it require some additional vote? I think that we really need to provide some sort of guidance to the community and also to management as far as what it is we're planning to do. I think this is good, and I mean I would ask why, if this City Council is so concerned about the final piece of, I think it's $416,000, why they spent somewhere between 45 and 90 seconds on February the 28th adding back 7 positions, which I'm sure must have cost at least $700,000 to the budget, and without so much as a thought about how we were going to pay for it. You have an incongruous decision-making process when you do that, and so it makes it difficult to make decisions as well. I would also add that we may want to consider having a third budget meeting just to be safe. We used to do that in the past. I strongly think that we should do that.
We have had 3, yes, I do recall that we've had 3 before, and then we went to 2. Yes, Mayor Protem Kerwin?
I think that this piece, there are a number of pieces in here that are different. One is the idea of, again, the privatization of the library, which is a piece that plays in here, and we have not talked about that. Not talked about that at all. We have operated a lean library. We have certainly welcomed all the volunteers that we have and used a lot of part-time staff members who've done a wonderful job, but we haven't talked about that. There are also other pieces out there right now since other communities are experiencing much the same things that we are in terms of another regional outreach, which we haven't seen for months. And there may be a different mood out there now as communities are reckoning with the same dollars that we have, the discontinuation of some services that they would like to see. So I think that there are some other opportunities besides this one that is just outlined here. And I'd like to be able to have a full conversation about that. So it's not just the what kind of library, it's the kind of how long and what method of support for it. Those are the three pieces that I think that we have to reckon with. It's not so much of here's some numbers and just do it issue. It is what kind, how long, and where to go from there.
Okay. Further discussion on this? Yes, Councilman Slater?
I'd be happy to add a third. I think a third date would be good to add to the budget process, especially if anybody's going to be out of town.
Do we have to set a third one tonight? If
It would help us.
it would help, I know. Where's the calendar? Are you looking at a different day other than a Monday?
How about sometime during the week of May 2nd?
How about the Thursday, which is the 4th?
Wednesday's the 4th.
Wednesday's the 4th? You want to give, I'd like to go to Thursday instead of Wednesday. That would be the 5th. Can you go to the 5th?
I can't do either of those dates, I'm sorry.
Either of those?
I can do the 3rd.
Oh, that's 2 days in a row.
Okay.
You want to do 2nd and 3rd?
No, 2nd.
Dana and I will have to cancel our office hours on that day.
Well,
So
that's the way it goes.
we're willing to do that, though.
That's the way it goes.
Third would be
The
fine.
3rd would be fine.
Third.
You want to go to the 3rd? That's Tuesday, Monday, and then Tuesday?
Can we,
John?
John, can you do Monday and Tuesday?
Well,
They have to have a different clerk.
I don't think it, well, it depends on what you want to do. Right now we have the first two meetings scheduled